Over the weekend, linguist, academic, and activist Noam Chomsky was barred from entering Israel. Now, Chomsky is Jewish himself and even spent time in the 1950s living on a kibbutz in Israel, but he's now a critic of Israeli policy. Joining me from New York is author and critic of Israel as well, Norman Finkelstein, who was also denied entry to the Jewish state in 2008. He's going to give us some insight. Mr. Finkelstein, I want to thank you so much for speaking with us. Now, you are also Jewish. You are the son of Holocaust survivors, yet you were denied entry into Israel on security grounds in 2008. What is your take on why Israel has chosen to deny entry to certain outspoken people, such as yourself and Mr. Chomsky? What's really going on here?
Well, I think for the first time in a long time, Israel is being held to its own avowed standards. And being held to its own avowed standards, it's being exposed and now feels very threatened. So for a long time, Israel was saying it was waiting to see the emergence of a Palestinian Gandhi in the occupied Palestinian territories. But when the Palestinians start to demonstrate nonviolently and peacefully, and international volunteers came to support them as they protested nonviolently and peacefully, Israel began to expel the international supporters, and many Americans, including many American Jews, have now been denied entry into Israel and into the occupied territories because they support nonviolent protest. In the same way, Israel claims it's a Western nation ruled by law.
That's one thing I want to...
all of your...
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to step on your tongue.
As all of your listeners know, recently the Goldstone mission headed by the South African Jew and Zionist Richard Goldstone came out with a report, and he's a respected jurist, a respected legal mind, and he said that Israel committed war crimes and should be brought before the International Court of Justice. So once again, the values that Israel espouses are now being used to expose it. And so Israel feels very threatened by any criticism of its policy, mostly because the criticism, and they know it, is valid.
It's one thing I want to touch upon that you kind of mentioned. I mean, it's one thing if we're talking about a country such as North Korea, which is known to be controlling of the kinds of speech that take place within the countries, but we're talking about a democratic nation here. How can a country that asserts itself as a robust democracy keep people out whose views it finds offensive?
Well, in recent years, Israel has grown more and more intolerant of dissent. It was very noticeable that during Israel's massacre in Gaza between December 27th and January 18th, there was very little dissent tolerated in Israel. And the few voices that showed the courage of dissent, like Gideon Levy, the columnist in Haaretz newspaper, he came under severe attack. After the Israeli massacre in Gaza, all the organizations in Israel which have done human rights work in support of the Palestinians and in support of democracy in Israel came under tremendous attack by the government, which then began to put forth bills in the Knesset criminalizing the activities of these civil rights organizations, Israeli civil rights organizations.
Mr. Finkelstein, I just want to ask you yes or no, because we're almost out of time. A columnist for Haaretz said Israel is beginning to tamper with free speech and flirting with totalitarianism. Do you agree? Yes or no?
Well, I think the simple answer is, first they went after the marginal people, and now they're going after a person like Noam Chomsky, who is widely regarded as the greatest living mind in the world today.
All right. Well, thank you so much for giving us your insight. And